So today is so many of you have been here before, but if this is your first time, this yin class was also designed to be a complement to your daily life. Greta and I are big yin heads, and we believe that yin is really a preventative medicine for injury and just for moving around in your day to day. Yin really gets into the joint capsules, breaking up deeper fascia that you can't really get in just a normal stretch that you hold for 20 seconds or so. We're holding our poses for much longer, which we'll go over later, but we also like to kind of introduce a muscle we're going to be stretching today or be kind of focusing on today, and use that as kind of a guide if we would like during our practice as a guide to focus and to get deeper into the meditation of the pose. So today we're going to talk about a really tricky muscle. It's called the piriformis muscle, and I'm sure that name of that muscle has been presented before, and that's because it's a big hip rotator. And in yoga, we spend a lot of time rotating our hips. So we hear piriformis, piriformis. But let's learn just kind of what it is and how we're going to be stretching it today. All right. I need to kind of organize these, play from this side. So this is the piriformis muscle. It originates, the tendon of the muscle originates at the anterior surface of the sacrum around S2 and S4. So your sacrum is after your lumbar spine, that big soft part here on your back. It goes into what's like almost your tailbone. And you almost have that visual when you touch your tailbone of those little holes. Think about that tailbone, but from the front side of the body. So kind of as you're feeling it on your butt, if you are participating on feeling your sacrum, you could think about the piriformis muscle attaching to the front of the pelvis. So the piriformis really begins at the front of the sacral spine. And then insertion of the muscle is at the greater trochanter of the femur. So it's our thigh bone. And its big action is to externally rotate the thigh. We often see that in yoga in butterfly pose, which we'll do today, reclined pigeon, which a lot of PTs refer to as the piriformis stretch, but in yoga we call it reclined pigeon. And it's really good to address this muscle because piriformis syndrome is often a condition people experience when they sit for long hours and don't do a lot of external rotation of the leg. It also can happen due to injury and impact. The piriformis muscle can get really tight and it compresses the sciatic nerve, causing sciatica and sciatica-like symptoms. So here is on the next slide. Oh, that's what I was talking about. So this picture on the left is the front of the pelvis, and this picture on the right is our view from our back. So you see here in the picture on the left, you can see the muscle attaching to the front of the tailbone bone itself. And then you see here in the picture of the back, it goes all the way to the thigh bone. It is deep to the big glute max. So the piriformis is a deep muscle, meaning to stretch it, you kind of have to go deeper into the stretch. Most of the times when you're in external rotation, you're feeling your glute max stretch, and your piriformis muscle being so deep to it is also happening, but a lot of the sensation you feel is from glute max. Here is the picture too of the piriformis going over the sciatic nerve. And so when that muscle is tight, it sends a message, it compresses the nerve, And then the nerve sends a message to the brain saying like, help, help, like my leg is in trouble. And that causes shooting pains down the back of the leg, into the lower back, causing tightness to all the surrounding muscles. So by stretching our piriformis, we can preventatively, hopefully, relieve some of its compression on that sciatic nerve. And then going back, the poses we're gonna do today, are reclined pigeon and butterfly. And we're gonna be in those poses for quite a long time. So in those poses, we give you the option to think about where your piriformis is in time and space, feeling the top of the hip bone, feeling that tailbone, picturing the tailbone from the front, and just how that feels in that moment. And that's about it. That's all I want to talk about. I'll be peppering in throughout the way. And yeah, thinking about this big, really important muscle. Well, I guess it's not that big, but it's pretty important.
Cool. Thank you, Veronica. You've even like lectured on that before, but I feel like every time I hear about it, it like hits a different way. So thank you. And before we enter into the pose or asana part of the practice, I wanted to start with a few rounds of Om. And we chant Om to connect us to resonant sound. And if you want to like pop off mute really quick and then pop on mute, I'm totally cool if you want to do that. But it's also fine if you want to stay muted. But either way, finding a seat, and you can sit on something. So taking a moment to connect to the earth, feeling the points of contact between the sides of your ankles, glutes, and then also feeling the lengthening of the spine, and then letting the shoulders relax down, releasing tension in the neck, the jaw, the forehead, the chest, the belly. And we'll do one clearing breath together and then 3 rounds of Om. Inhale in through the nose. And exhale AHA out of the mouth. This time prepare for Om. Inhale. Inhale, breathe in. And exhale, release the breath out, Iche. And thank you for those of you who joined. I'm also so grateful my cat has just slept through it. And we're going to start class in one of our favorite poses, sleeping baby, napping infant. So coming to the belly. And we'll start with the right knee bent. And this very much emulates like Spider-Man or Spider-Person crawling up a building. And then deciding if you want to get a pillow for underneath your chest or something to support the head, and then lowering the chest down and bringing the left cheek to the mat, and you can gaze over your right elbow. You're also welcome to experiment with gazing the other direction and then just switching on the other side. And I'm going to go ahead and set our timer. And then I'm going to go over kind of the tenets of yin. And yin energetically is the opposite of yang. And yang energy, I feel like people are usually more familiar with, so it can be helpful to kind of name those qualities first. It's very solar, it's active, it is motion, brightness, maybe even a sense of like urgency, all that stuff. And yin is not urgent. Yin is slow. Yin is a study of receptivity. It is cooler. It is there's so many words like mysterious, generating, nurturing. And during this practice, we invite you to kind of tap into those qualities. And I have found for me in my practice, also even with meditation, to validate those qualities. It's good to slow down. It's good to take a moment to listen. It's good to practice rest and regeneration. And I know in my life, it's easier for me to be like, "Ooh, I'm being productive. Like, let's." And actually, in this, we want to validate resting and the pause. So really cultivating those qualities and loving them just as much as the solar qualities. And there are three tenets, there are three kind of pillars of this practice. And the first is to meet your gentle edge. And we've already arrived into the pose. You've already picked your gentle edge. And the important thing to remember here is that we're going to be holding these poses for time. I think our longest hold today is actually just 5 minutes. So nothing too crazy today. Sometimes we'll do a hold up to like 8 or I think usually just 8 in this class, but if you're really going for it, you can do up to even like 20 minutes. So picking the gentle edge, and when you get there, thinking to yourself, okay, could I be here for 5 minutes? Like your range of motion may get you to like a different place, but if you can't sustain it for time, maybe pulling the edge back or adding a prop, adding a pillow, adding a block, adding a blanket nearby or a couch cushion, anything that is going to help support and sustain your practice. So meeting the gentle edge. And the second is to be still. And there are two reasons in which you'd move in this practice. And the first is if you're invited to go deeper. Sometimes it literally takes 3 minutes for the muscles finally to deactivate. And then you almost feel like the sense of release. And then you may be invited to go deeper. Like follow your edge, of course. The other reason is we'd never want you to experience pain. So if there is like a stabbing or a sharp sensation or a burning sensation, pulling the edge back, reassessing, thinking how you can get into the intention of the pose, which is part of the reason learning about anatomy is so liberating. So if we know that we're kind of targeting external rotation in the hip and we're working with the piriformis, like maybe I could do it on my back, maybe I could do it against the wall. It's not so much about creating the mold of this perfect pose that we've extrapolated from the internet or something. And then lastly, we hold for time. And I keep track of time, as does Veronica, on her cell phone, my cell phone. And we are past the halfway mark, but not quite to the final minute yet. And in all other poses, I'm going to give a halfway mark and a final minute. This first pose, I do get a little lost sometimes in terms of giving the time markers just because I'm talking about the practice. And I guess the only other things I will add are when you do kind of carve out this time for practicing receptivity and being in the quiet, and this isn't always the case, but sometimes that is when the mind becomes the most loud. Like all of a sudden there's all this quiet and it's like chat, 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 like what's going on in the narration of my mind. And if that does come up for you, trying to either direct your attention towards your breath, like you really utilizing that as a tool, but then also trying to incorporate elements of mindfulness. If it happens, like, okay, don't judge it. Don't try to fix it. Just kind of be the observer. And that's all. Like you noticing is a practice of meditation, and it's a very valid and helpful tool. And we are on our last few moments here. Got about 30 seconds left. And gently begin to direct the right leg back towards center. And take any free movement here that is going to feel like release. You may want to kind of kick your legs or whatever natural movement is going to feel nice to you. And then we'll shift to the other side. So this time bend the left leg and bring the opposite cheek to the mat that you did on the other side. Maybe you're looking for some support here. And also noticing over the course, we're holding this for 5 minutes. Like you arrive and maybe it's kind of like, I don't really feel anything. But then after 5 minutes, how it evolves, how it changes. And also, as we continue to get into this external rotation throughout the rest of the class, like how it affects and evolves as the whole class goes on. And I guess yin is generally practiced in silence. I know some teachers like to read or like play music, but I really like to treat each pose kind of as its own meditation. So I'm going to kind of taper the talk, and we will add in little tidbits of maybe energetic or anatomical information, but really using this as an opportunity to connect with yourself and be held by the ground, especially when you're so close to the earth with the top of your chest, like really feeling those points of contact. And this is the halfway point. And halfway points are a good time to check in if you need to add a prop, ditch a prop. And also they're a really good time to do a body scan. So check in with the glutes. Are they clenched? Is there tension in the jaw, in the forehead, in the neck? And even though we connected with all those places already, like when we sat down to do our own, if you have a habitual tension pattern, which I definitely do, it like goes back to it even after like 5 minutes. So just doing like a little bit of a scan and trying to release those areas, come into the yielding nature of this practice. And this is our final minute. And slowly begin to move the left leg back towards the right. Walk the hands back towards your hips. And come into a tabletop. And then let the hips fall off towards one side. And Veronica is going to take us through the next portion of class.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that pose just makes me so tired every time I'm in it. Cool. So our next pose is we're gonna go right into the external rotation of the thigh. We're gonna do a butterfly with a forward fold. So sometimes in butterfly, our legs can be up here, this close, but often in yin, I kind of like to have my butterfly a little bit of a wider diamond. I feel like for this, I can hold for time a little bit longer, whereas here, and I bend forward, like my adductors start screaming, my knees feel really tense. But when I'm out here, I could reel and bend forward. I find I could get a deeper bend, and I could get more of the sensation in my hips and in my outer leg. If you want some support, adding things underneath the thighs, whether it be pillows, blocks, rolled up blankets, this will help with gravity not being such a huge distraction in this stretch. Another good thing to do is if you want to tilt the pelvis a little bit more, stack a blanket, pillow, block right underneath that tailbone to kind of bloop the pelvic bowl forward, tilt the pelvic bowl forward. Bloop isn't a word, a movement, but you kind of tilt the pelvic bowl forward and come to a forward fold. So I'll let everyone go and meet their gentle edge. I left my phone elsewhere. Okay, and I'll start the timer. And also in this pose as well, sometimes the head can hang heavy, and you can get a nice neck stretch from that. Or sometimes if hanging your head is a little dizzying or honestly feels like the stretch is more on your neck, you can simply kind of rest your neck forward or bring your fists on your knees and support like you're, thinking about something, thinking pose. Support your neck underneath your chin with your two hands. I'm gonna go for the front next, relaxing my head. And this is our halfway point. This is our final minute. Coming out of this pose, I like to walk my hands up, breath by breath, vertebrae by vertebrae, till I'm coming up to a seat. Bringing my knees together, giving it a couple windshield wipes. And we're gonna go actually back into butterfly, but this time we're gonna do it reclined on our backs. So maybe in this pose you've gotten a little bit deeper. Here's an opportunity to go even deeper, or just to experiment with how this feels when your spine isn't in the equation. Your spine is gonna be neutral. So coming to our backs, I like to start with my knees flat on the ground, kind of adjust to what this feels like, and then make that diamond once again, feet together. Add whatever support you'd like underneath the knees and the thigh, and really feel the beginning of the front of the body, the front of the pelvis and the hips. Get that opening that it didn't get in the previous stretch. Because we remember that piriformis does connect to the front surface of the tailbone. So that piriformis muscle is actually facing the ceiling right now, the front of it, and understanding that we're getting into the fascia still of the piriformis, just in a very different way. We'll be here for 3 more minutes. This is our final minute. All right. Moving slowly, close the knees together. Coming out of butterfly. Oof. And what always feels really good to me after a long butterfly is hugging my knees into my chest and rolling a little bit on my spine just to massage out that stretch. Our spine does a lot to support us, so giving it a nice roll is always good. And we're gonna stay on our backs for this next pose. We're gonna do reclined pigeon. So we'll start with the right leg coming over the left. For reclined pigeon, we have both of our knees up. Do the side, both of our knees up. And then we're gonna take our right leg and bend it in an external rotation to put our ankle right below the knee of the left, below the left knee. Ugh, words. Now, if this is too much or if this is good right here, you can keep it. An option also to thread your arms through to grab behind the left leg and pull that a little bit closer. You'll probably feel it pretty immediately. So I'll start the timer. Another thing I want to offer is if there's a pinching sensation in the front of the hip, which I sometimes experience, a good thing to do for that is actually place a pillow on the front of the body and kind of pull the leg in from there. This adds kind of a little soft cushion between the leg and the front of the hip so it doesn't pinch as much. And once you're in this pose and you found your edge, just seeing what a couple deep breaths will do to relax the back. I always love to send my exhales to a certain part of my body. So for now, I'm going to send my exhales into my lower back. So every inhale, take a nice big one. And then exhale into the lower back, letting it relax onto the mat. Feel supported. And be able to really, really focus in on that nice stretch of the hip. Nothing has to be working but that. And even that doesn't have to work too hard. We're a little bit past our halfway point. All right. Over the course of the next few breaths, begin to slowly release this pose. I like to just slowly come down, place my left foot on the mat, and then release the right leg. Kind of actually giving it a few shakes. Maybe a few windshield wipers. Get into a little bit more of the lower thoracic spine with some rotation. And then we're going to go on to the left leg. So again, bringing our feet up, knees stacked upon our hips. Taking the left ankle and placing it right below the right knee. Each side, of course, is going to be very different. So if you don't get into as deep a stretch on this left side, that's okay. Just find your edge. Maybe in this one, we pull through, hold the back of the right thigh. Maybe we go all the way to the front of the right calf. Remaining with a neutral spine on our mats. Assessing if we need any props to assist our practice, make this pose, work the best for our bodies in this moment right now. And I know for me, usually my right side is the tight one, but today the left decided it had something it wanted to say as well. So just noticing. And we are coming up to our halfway point. Like Greta said earlier, a good time to take a body scan is at the halfway point. Notice if there's anything still kind of holding on or still kind of feeling tension. Sometimes I notice my brows furrow because I'm thinking. My brows automatically furrow, and maybe your jaw or your fingers and toes. Sometimes my toes clench. And seeing if those things can relax with a few breaths. Also sometimes, especially in hip openers, you kind of get this dull and achy sensation as well. And when that's there, we can stay in it, or we can opt to move a little bit out of the pose. See if just moving a millimeter out takes that dullness and achiness away, and we can take a nice deep breath and relax again. We're in our final minute.
Releasing this pose by dropping the grip and placing the foot back on the mat, releasing the left heel from the right knee, giving a couple windshield wipers. And I'll pass it back off to
Greta, but taking this time for free movement. So important in the yin practice is what's between the poses too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Veronica. And after you've taken all the free movement that you need, we're headed into Pashimotonasana Seated Forward Fold, which is called Caterpillar in Yin. So for setting this up, it can be nice, especially if you have like one of those like thin blocks, or if you have like a book. I actually just like to roll my yoga mat and then sit on the very edge. That helps my pelvic bowl tilt down. You can also kind of think of it as your tail flaring. So getting the sit bones and the glutes set up. And there's also always the option in this pose to have your knees just like a little bit bent. And when the knees are bent, sometimes it helps the chest just like totally flop down when the legs are straight. So there's just a difference, and you can kind of experiment. Maybe you like put blocks under your knees or like a pillow or something. And then for the fold itself, you may grab a pillow to support your chest. And I'm going to give a halfway mark. So if you want to bring one cheek to the mat or to the pillow or whatever you're using, and then flip at the halfway mark, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to set our timer here. And Pashimotonasana or Caterpillar. And I usually like to kind of incorporate like one energetic element for the longest hold. And in Pashimotonasana and in the next pose that we're doing, supported bridge, there is kind of an emphasis on the spine. And I was thinking, or I just kind of like looked at my bookshelf and just pulled a book kind of just to decide what I was going to talk about. And I opened up to this little part on the Sushumna. And the Sushumna is kind of like the spinal cord. It's going to be in that same, the same place, but it's going to be more energetic, and it's definitely like not the same thing. The spinal cord is like an anatomical, there's like a definition. It's a part of the central nervous system that works with the brain. The Sushumna is definitely more of an energetic quality. And one of these texts, this one is The Mirror of Yoga by Richard Freeman. It's the central channel of the body, the esoteric middle path, which is visualized as a bright, hollow reed or tube. When opened so that the prana flows in it, it consumes time and space. So that's like a really fun definition. But the book that I actually opened up to was Swami Vivekananda's, and there's this in the 6th lesson, Sushumna. It is a very useful to meditate on the Sushumna. You may have a vision of it come to you, and this is the best way. Then meditate for a long time on that. It is a very fine, very brilliant thread, this living passage through the spinal cord. And so if you wanted to use that idea, there's also like the two sides, the Ida and Pingala. And Ida is supposed to be the more lunar side, like with the moon. And Pingala is supposed to be the more solar side, kind of more heat, more energy. And Ida is more cooling, more calming. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I've never like drawn those parallels before. That is definitely rooted in India and kind of more Hindu tradition. And we often use yin and yang, which is rooted in more meridian theory in Chinese medicine. So just kind of using those as focal points. And we are at, well, we're not quite there. We're almost at our halfway mark. And this is halfway. And this is the final minute. And slowly begin to discern how you would like to come up and out. You may press the palms. Maybe it's more of an active motion, lifting in the chest, letting the head come up last. And take in any free movement. I know some people like to do like this form of tabletop as a release. Whatever it is that's going to feel counter and satisfying. And we will meet laying on our backs. We're going to practice supported bridge, and then we're going to do a twist. And I love the sciatica class because in the twist, we also are using a scarf. And the rest of the class is just going to be on our back. So if you wanted to grab right now a very long sock, or if you have a strap nearby, or I have this scarf that I'm going to use, like a towel. There's like a lot of versatile things. So just grabbing the props, making sure you have them. And then we'll meet laying on our backs to practice supported bridge. And for supported bridge, we had a really nice illustration of the sacrum. That's where the block is going to go. And you can experiment with levels. You may start out in the lowest setting. You may have to grab a couple books, maybe add some books, or you may do the middle. Some people I know even do the high setting. But if you go there, remember we are doing this for time. And I'm going to go ahead and get into the pose. And start the timer. You're welcome to have the feet planted on the ground. There is also the option here of extending your legs out. And then you kind of can get into the psoas kind of ever so slightly as well. And in yin, we're accessing the connective tissues and the fascia, just like Veronica mentioned. And this is just something I always like to mention. I always thought about fascia as like right below the surface of your skin, but the fascia is also the casing around your muscles. So when we're getting in the piriformis, or when we're getting in the psoas, we're getting into the connective tissues as well, because it's the encasing around the muscle, if that makes sense. And we are at the halfway mark. And this is our final minute marker. And slowly you can remove the block from underneath and take a moment maybe to hug the knees in towards your chest, kind of coming into a ball shape, Apanasana. And roll around on the sacrum, the flat part of the spine. Or take any other movement. Maybe you're craving like a happy baby for some reason, or just really anything that is going to feel like what your body is asking for. And then we will move into the twist. And this is the other reason I love this class, is because we do a really long twist on both sides. And the benefits that can come from a long twist, I just feel like are incremental. So finding your scarf or strap, hopefully everyone had the time to grab one, and wrapping the scarf around the bottom of your foot. And I like to do it like right where the arch is. I think that feels kind of nice. And then coming to lie on the back, you may need to kind of fidget with the length of where the scarf is on both sides. Maybe you like it perfectly evenly distributed. Maybe you're like, whatever. And then extend the left leg out long. Left leg can also be bent. Not going to be super picky here. And we are going to actually hold this just for a minute. And then we're going to move our way into the twist. Remembering to relax the muscles here. It doesn't have to be extension or any movement. Trying to relax the arms too. And then slowly with the left hand, begin to direct your leg towards the right. We'll slowly lowering it down, navigating any obstacles on the way down. And you can let the foot come all the way to the floor. You can also, I'm actually going to put a block so it's landing on the block. There's many good ways. Maybe you prop it up. There's like a chair or something. And we will be here for 5 minutes. And if you get into this twist, or maybe you didn't find like a scarf, you can do really any twist. A long twist is gonna have the same benefits regardless. And this is the halfway mark.
And final minute. And slowly, with both hands, begin to direct the leg back up towards center. And you can loosen the scarf, plant the foot down, and take a moment for any free movement. And then we will switch sides. Interlacing the scarf or whatever you're using around your foot. And we'll hold this really not too long. We did like 30 seconds on the other side because I feel like this is a little active for the arms. And we do want to invite a lot of passivity into our yin practice. And even noticing the difference from side to side. I'm always like fascinated that they feel so different. I don't know why my baseline assumption always is that they should be the same. I guess we kind of live in a world where we're obsessed with symmetry, so I guess it makes sense. And then extend the right leg out long and begin to direct yourself into a twist. I like to use the right arm to guide my left leg towards the right. Left arm can go out like half of a T. And your gaze can be up here. Your gaze can be directed towards the left palm. And choosing if you want to find some support on this side. You may want to rest the ankle on top of a block or a book, or maybe you've got like a house plant that wants to get involved. Maybe there's a cat. And this is the halfway mark. And using the halfway mark as a body scan, I just noticed I was like completely like kind of like clenching my leg. And I was like, why am I doing this? So remembering to relax it. It doesn't have to be active right now.
And final minute. And slowly begin to direct your foot back up towards the ceiling. Bring the other knee in with it and let the prop down and cast it off towards the side. And take any last free movement you need here before you release into Shavasana, final rest. Maybe you need to roll the ankles, whatever it is. Invite the movement into your body. And then come into Shavasana, letting the limbs come down. You're always welcome to take Shavasana on the side or on the belly, just like we started class. And if you're looking for a point of focus, maybe your point of focus, we did so much talk about the piriformis. Maybe you try to find that muscle, or maybe you focus on the Sushumna. Sometimes it's called the Sushumna Nadi, and Nadi is like an energetic channel. Sometimes it's translated as like a little river. So maybe you try to find that energetic channel. And I'll let you know when it's time to come up and out of class. And slowly begin to invite little micro movements into your body. Maybe you start with your toes, fingers. Maybe it's your eyebrows, shoulders. And then let the movement travel, let it ripple into the rest of your body. Taking your time. When you're ready, bring the arms up overhead, like you're stretching in the morning. And I feel like that's a phrase that so many yoga teachers use, but all of us have like banisters over our head, so I can never do this in the morning. It's like a cartoon stretch. And then draw the knees in towards your chest. And determine if you would like to roll over onto the right or the left side. And the left side is associated more with the yin practice, the lunar practice, and also Ida, that channel. The right is more solar active. And you're not tethered to either direction. And just incorporating another level of integration. And then using the bicep like a pillow and extending a wave of gratitude and appreciation to yourself for showing up and carving out time for doing our practice like this. That's deeply recharging, and it's also like, even if you don't have sciatica, it helps prevent sciatica, or it really gets into the connective tissues. Like, it's a really intentional and healing practice. And also honoring the many lineages of this practice. In yin, a lot of the first poses that are really talked about in the older wisdom texts are kind of very yin in nature. So honoring our roots and the origin of this practice in India, but then also honoring yin is rooted in meridian theory and Chinese medicine. So honoring those roots as well, and honoring the lineage of teachers that brought this information forward, and also honoring the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, the Duwamish people that I occupy here in Seattle. And Veronica.
And I am bringing class to you today from just southeast of El Paso, Texas, in native Lipan Apache tribe land.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate, even when we shift spaces, we're still doing the land acknowledgement and learning the different names. And slowly, if you haven't already, press yourself up to a seat. And we can meet with hands at heart center if that feels authentic in your practice. This gesture representing non-dualism, so the coming together of the channels, Ida and Pingala, yin and yang, a negative and a positive force, honoring the complexity and depth at that meeting point, and bringing hands from heart center to third eye, and bowing forward to seal in your practice, honoring the whole self, both the luminous and the shadowy aspects. Peace and thank you. Thank you so much for coming to class tonight. We always appreciate you being here. And it's such a way, it's like the only way to connect with community, being COVID safe. Like, we couldn't gather in a group like this. So I'm so appreciative of it. And I'm going to pop my Venmo information and also my email address, which is my PayPal as well. And Veronica and I split the proceeds from this class. This class actually evolved out of sciatica. Veronica taught a workshop like years ago, and it was the inspiration for this class. So I always like when we do this one. Otherwise, let's see if you have any